Hi, I'm Karin Davidson, and I am with a very special person. Her name is Pat Crilly, as we like to call her, as Nurse Crilly. She's been a nurse for 40 years, and she's an author. And she's written her second book, which is right here. And it's called Extraordinary Healing, Ordinary Miracle. And sometimes reading gets kind of slow, and you read a little bit, and you put the book down, and you read a little bit, put the book down. I knew Pat was publishing it because she's also a friend of mine and a fellow trainer. And I knew I had to read it fast. I thought, oh, she's okay. And so I started reading it. About 2 in the morning, I finally had to go to sleep. I set the alarm for 4:30 in the morning so that I could get up and finish this book before I started work. The book, it's about an amazing miracle without allopathic medicine. And she was diagnosed with cancer, and in 3 weeks, it was cleared simply by alternative methods. And also, Pat is hysterical. And so she makes this terrible ordeal laugh out loud funny. So
maybe to you, but
yeah, maybe not you.
Okay, just a little correction. I did have surgery, but that was only to prove that everything was gone. Okay.
Well, you can explain that.
Yeah. Okay. So, in a nutshell, in 2009, I was diagnosed with invasive ovarian cancer. It did not have a good prognosis. Every test they did yielded more devastating results, and I just decided at the moment that I heard the first news that there was a mass in my pelvis, well, my first thoughts were, it's cancer. I was racked with fear. I was going to be tortured and with painful treatments, and then I'd die. Not allowing for any other.
Isn't that what everybody did?
Well, exactly, yeah. And so what I realized, and I was really blessed that I happened to be with a friend of mine who was a hypnotist, and she was the first person I told, and she got me into the chair and hypnotized me, and basically the idea was either A, it's not cancer, or B, whatever it is, you'll get rid of it, and I liked that.
That sounds good.
The first thing I had to do was get rid of the fear, or at least overcome the fear. And that was probably one of the most difficult things that I did, but I was able to do it fairly quickly because I realized that without overcoming that part of it, there wasn't going to be any healing whatsoever. And I think that's probably where most people get stuck with any kind of illness, but particularly cancer. So how I did it is sort of protracted. So I, briefly, I just decided I needed to think better thoughts. Beliefs are thoughts that you just keep thinking over and over again, as Abraham Hicks says, and I just decided I needed to think better thoughts than I was thinking, and that's what I did. And each time an unpleasant thought would come to mind, I would cancel that and just think about anything that was preferable to that, and it worked. So I was scheduled to have surgery about, well, just a little more than 3 weeks after the diagnosis. But 2 weeks after, I met the gynecologist-oncologist, who I announced to her with quite a bit of false bravado that I was a practitioner of alternative modalities, and I was going to heal myself. And you have to expect that, or respect that, and accept it, or I'm not coming back. And she said, okay. Because she thought, she's a lunatic, she's going to go off someplace and die, so let me just say what I have to say to bring her in. But down the road, she became a believer.
So what kinds of things did you do?
Well, I just, I pulled out all of the stops. Any kind of modality that I was familiar with, or any practitioner I knew that did stuff, I just had that done. So it started with hypnosis. I did a technique called Psych-K. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a belief change technique, which came in really, really handy early on. And I went to a friend of mine who does the most amazing hypnosis, Reiki, chakra balancing, which really kind of set me on the path to just calming down, because I'm generally not a kind of a low-key person.
Say the least.
Yeah, so that actually calmed me down, and I tapped. So well, I've been a tapper for a long time, so I started that immediately. And it was a little bit scattered. Ultimately, I began to use the switch words, which are seemingly random words that work on your subconscious. And I strung a group of them together, and I repeated those as I tapped.
Sometimes it's called power tapping, And it is seemingly random words. And the nice thing about the book is that, you know, the first half of it is her story, which I know it doesn't sound funny, but just imagine, I'm going to tell one quick thing that was funny, is at the end, just before I think it's the last surgery, she has Reiki in her hands that this person gave you, and she had to give it to the surgeon. So you can imagine Pat going up and going, here's your surgery hand, Reiki, there you go. And so just in the way she says it is hysterical. So just reading the book and the things that she went through and talking to the allopathic doctors and the simplest things like what the perception of cancer is. And you go in, where you went into the hospital and they give her like all these pamphlets of what you do with cancer and war on cancer. And what did you do with those pamphlets?
I put it in the garbage. Well, I tried to give it back because I hadn't even been officially diagnosed yet. And the woman said, well, no, you can keep that. I said, well, I might not have cancer. And she goes, well, just in case. And I was like, hey, you never know.
No, thanks. I'll just...
And so I kept it. I tossed it in the garbage. And
so I want one story that's not in the book.
What's that?
You tell me.
Oh, any old story
Any
that's
old
not
story.
in the book? Let's see. Well, I was getting some messages that things were moving along in the right direction, but I wasn't really sure that other people were hearing me. I mean, I told anybody that stood still long enough, I'm getting rid of this, and they all, you know, just whatever.
Sure you are.
I mean, I even had one doctor that I had a polyp in my stomach, which by itself wasn't a big deal, but it disappeared in 2 weeks. And so they tried to tell me it was an undigested peanut. I was like, I always chew my peanuts. But, you know, and it was also attached to a little tree stump. So I was thinking it probably wasn't a peanut. Sorry.
What do you? No, it's great.
That's in the book. But the thing was that I was telling my doctor about it, and she really wasn't believing it, and she would just pat my hand until much later. But I wasn't getting a lot of validation for the things that were happening, even though some were random and seemingly random, and some were seemingly small. And when after I gave the doctor Reiki, and I told the anesthesiologist to turn on my iPod to the music that I had prepared, and you would think that I asked him to, like wire me for sound. And I heard my doctor say to the medical student, pay attention, this is one for the books. But I wasn't sure if that was like the anesthesia starting, so I didn't put it in the book because I'm 99% sure that's what she said, but she would never admit it. So that was one story that I didn't have in the book.
Well, thank you. One more thing.
Yeah.
What do you hope? What do you hope by release? Because I know you're kind of a private person just a little bit, and you putting your life here,
Yeah.
in the private parts.
Yeah, really.
And so
this little uptight, repressed Irish Catholic girl.
Yes, exactly. So what are you hoping? You went through the nightmare of actually getting yourself out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing was that I really didn't have any desire to write it. You know how you hear people say, well, it was a catharsis, and I didn't have that need. I did it once, and I thought that was enough. But people kept telling me, you owe this to other people to share your story. And so I thought, well, yeah, God was nice enough to spare me, so I suppose that I really should write the book. But it took me 4 years before I even began to write it. One, because I'm a procrastinator, and two, because it took me that long to figure out what did I really do? Like, what is it that I would tell people? And then it took me almost 2 years to write it. And that wasn't procrastination. I'm a really slow writer. But what I came up with ultimately, the first part was really my story. The second part, I deconstructed what I did because I really didn't know what it was. And so while there were a lot of techniques that I used, there were three things that really stood out for me, and I now call them the healing triad. And one was get past the fear. The second was to radically alter your belief system from one that cancer is a death sentence to my body's capable of healing itself. And three was to take back my power that I gave willingly many times and unwittingly other times to the cancer, to the medical traditionalists, and to my friends and family who were scared. And that was disempowering. So those were the three things that I did that I really think made the difference. And they were kind of in that particular order.
One thing I asked her was, because she has dates and times in here, and I knew that she didn't want to write anything about this, and I was like, why, how do you have dates and times? And you answered?
Well, I just wrote everything down, like procedures I had that day and the complication of the day.
She says they're nurse notes.
Yeah, they are.
She's, because she's been a nurse for over 40 years, so I just wrote my nurse notes. I was like, well, thank goodness you did that, because it's now you're able to follow everything.
Right, but the hard part was then I had to attach the emotion to it and the trauma to it, and that was, that's what made it 260 pages instead of 2 loose leaf pages. So,
does anybody have questions?
Yes.
Did you ever try visualization?
Did I ever try visualization? I did, and as a hypnotist for many years, I often encouraged clients to do that. And so my friend Roxy, who started to do some hypnosis with me, and she suggested, she didn't tell me, she said, imagine the cancer, Pac-Man coming and eating the cancer, and it's just melting away. And I was like, so I sat up, I said, whoa, wait a minute, no. And she said, what's the matter? I said, that's disgusting. This huge tumor is now dripping down into the bottom of my pelvis. And I'm like, can I say it?
Yeah, sure.
It's gonna come pouring out of my vajayjay. I was like, no. So I just decided, however it happens, universe is fine with me. It can pop out my belly button for all I care, but I'm not gonna think of, you do it the way you wanna do it. I'm not gonna tell my body how to do it. And so I kind of gave up on that type of visualization. The visualization I did use was to see myself at the end of this just whole and healthy and well, and never allowing myself. I mean, I never said. People say when you were sick. I said I wasn't sick. I really felt okay. So I never say that I was sick. I'll tell you, I changed my language a lot about cancer, and one is that I never called it my cancer. I certainly did not want to own that. In fact, a friend pointed out to me that whenever I talked about it, I would say the cancer. I always did that, and I didn't really think about that, where most people go, my cancer. I said, the cancer. Didn't want to have anything to do with it. I also began to think of my body as an inhospitable host to an unwelcome guest, so the cancer had no choice but to leave. It was really that simple.
And she does tell about all this in the book. You go through the story about this first, and then at the end, you pick up a lot along the way. But the end is detailed, pretty detailed instructions on exactly what she did. Yeah, Mike?
What was the response of the medical profession?
Aside from my surgeon, who gave me a little high five, and kind of like conspiratorially, we know the truth. They didn't really want to hear it. They said I was lucky. It was a spontaneous remission. There was nothing spontaneous about it. I worked my butt off. And I had some, really wonderful physicians who said they probably didn't get it all, or it's coming back. In fact, the doctor who told me that the pathology was, the tumor was no longer cancer, they said it was borderline, which is certainly better than cancer. But within 5 seconds, she said, but it can come back, and it can come back as cancer. I was like, well, gee, thanks.
She makes notes in the book about the responses of disbelief, and that they just tried to find reasons, because this is a miracle. That's why it's called, extraordinary miracle, is because and it wasn't just the cancer. There's a series of things that went on during those 3 weeks, and they just can't wrap their head around it. Just can't wrap their head around it.
No.
And she makes notes like that. So that's
and I also, I kind of have in italics things that sometimes I was thinking and wish I'd said, and sometimes if they're not in italics, I actually said them, so. Yes?
You said that you basically took your body back from your family and the doctors and stuff, took your power back. Did you do anything for any of your family members to help them with the fear, or did you just suggest they would do that?
Well, no, I actually have just a little tiny family and friends, and I didn't tell them. In fact, they found out that I actually had cancer when they saw on Facebook that I had a book out. So
I didn't know that. Oh my goodness.
Well, they knew they knew it was a little cancer, but I didn't make a big deal out of it.
I have a little cancer.
I just said I was having a hysterectomy for fibroids, and then I figured if it was really bad, I'd go, oops, it was cancer. But I you know,
I am
I
glad
didn't,
I am not your family.
they're kind of sad they are, but no.
I want to give you a compliment of myself and everybody listening intently, and I had a chance to talk with you last night. But when I heard your presentation, I realized that from an emphatic level, you embody faith, because I do believe after listening to you that faith opens the door, and it opened it for you. So let me give you a blessing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it really was faith that I didn't think I had anymore. And it was, you know, it was funny. I said, who's commandeering my thoughts here? You know, I just made this decision. I was going to be well, and I set that intention. And like I said, I'm a procrastinator, but, you know, I never let up on that. And
You weren't a procrastinator during those 3 weeks.
no,
For sure.
I was busy. I was really busy. In fact, I was busier than I think I really had to be. But yeah, it was a true belief that I was well, and you know, I just got proof of it every day. And I had no plan, but what happened was, and you talked about the red cars that when you decide you want one,
You see them all over the place.
things just showed up in my path, things that I would have ordinarily ignored. And it was almost, and I thought, well, I want to see the big picture. And I think it was too enormous for me to see. So it was just, let's go to this step, let's go to this step. There's something else around the corner, so that it didn't overwhelm me.
Okay.
Yes?
Do you mention any resources in the book that if people want to do their own work or find people to help them like you were helped, that they might be able, like there might be a direction?
There's some of it in there, some of my favorite books in music, and some different modalities and how you can find out, and Karin's in there. You know, I had to give her a plug.
Thank you very much. Well, you know, and this is the kind of thing, I think, another thing I really love about the book is, you know, the lightheartedness that she goes through this ordeal. But it's not one of those, I was healed by, you know, this, you know, it's just sort of, I did this, it worked. And I think that kind of drive, I did this and it worked, and being funny is going to introduce these modalities into a world that thinks that, oh, we're woo-woo, you know, and it's just, oh, hippies, and because this is not a hippie. Okay, Pat is not a hippie. And so it's just the way that she delivers it. And I think because it's a real miracle, that you believe it, even if you're not in this modality, that people are going to go, I think I believe this. What did you do? Right?
Yeah, I think, you know, being a nurse and sort of grounded, that it gives me a little bit of credibility. So, you know, I think that helps for sure. Somebody asked me about if I did anything nutritionally.
Yes, I did.
Right,
Okay.
because I am the poster child for good
Nutrition.
nutrition. Actually, I did. I radically changed my diet. When I got the call from my doctor that there was this huge mass and what it potentially was, I stopped at the store and I bought a bag of those little bite-sized Snickers. And I popped a few when I got home, and I popped a few more before I went to bed. But I started each day with my healthy shake, and then I ate bags of Snickers for the 3 weeks until I had surgery. Now, why did I do that? I wanted them. They tasted good. And I thought, if I'm going to croak, I'm going out with chocolate. So,
And so we're talking about, you know, calling Snickers and saying, wouldn't you want to use her as a... No.
yeah, really. So I could be the poster child for Snickers.
Really, there you go.
No, but I mean, I didn't have time to, I didn't think to affect any real change. And I thought changing my diet from what it was to gluten-free and vegan and stuff would be so stressful. I didn't need that.
And you had 3 weeks.
I had 3 weeks, yeah. I mean, you know.
Well, you can do it to 3 weeks, you know,
Yeah.
so...
And then they didn't feed me for a month, so it kind of balanced that. Well, it was tests and this and that, and it was like every time I turned around, it was like, oh, you can't eat today, and you can't eat tomorrow, or you can have, you know, greasy beef broth, but that was, you know, that was a treat. But, yeah, so that kind of balanced out. So I don't eat Snickers anymore.
I was just about to ask that question.
Yeah, Baby Ruths.
Pat,
Yes.
I'm so glad you came down here and
Glad to be
share
here.
this with everyone, and I'm so glad that you're here.
Me too.
Yeah. So please, this is a wonderful book. Please pick it up and read it, because not only will you enjoy it, it's going to get the word out to others. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, dear.